And we're ready to go. So welcome back after a long break, but it was unavoidable. Even if I wanted to try and give a share, there were no Wednesdays for an entire month. So that's kind of settled that. And here we are. So I hope you had a good Yontif. And we're going to go right back to the parasha of the week, which is the parasha of Noach, Noach and the flood. And well, it's a description that takes up most of the parasha. You know, the building of the ark, the entry into the ark, the stay in the ark, and eventually, obviously, exiting and re-entering society, and what happened after the flood. So here is a question I'd like to put to you. You've seen in print publications they do something which they call pull quotes, which have double purpose. They take kind of the key sentence of an article and put it in big characters with quotation marks sticking out in a big font. First of all, it takes up space. So sometimes you get a full page which would be 800 or 1,000 words, and now you can fill up the page and make it look nice if there are appropriate pictures. But it also helps the brain because you kind of looking at the main theme of the article while you're reading and I kind of particularly in this world we become accustomed to having so many inputs. If you watch a news program on TV, you've got the temperature on the one side and the Randola on the other, and at the bottom a headline streaming across while you're interviewing somebody. And nowadays they can't even interview one person. They've got to split the screen in two and have the interview happening on the one side and other stuff happening on the other side. So that pull quote helps to kind of focus. This is the main point, even as you read the rest of the information. So what would you choose to what's the word to kind of summarize in one phrase the portion of Noach? Would it be Bo'el HaTeva, which means come into the ark? That's how the parasha begins. Noach builds the ark, takes him, we're told, 120 years, the Medrash says. He builds and he builds and he builds. He's got the ark ready, and eventually the rains begin, and Hashem says to him, Bo'el HaTeva, come into the ark. Is that the one verse in the parasha that would kind of encapsulate what the story is about? Because after that, it's about living in the ark, it's about waiting, it's about sending out the birds, etc. It's about the land being ready, and eventually we have the verse that says "Tzei min hateva." So my question to you is, which would you choose as the kind of pull quote to explain this week's, to summarize this week's parasha? And I'm going to turn it over to you and give you a few seconds to think about it. But here it is. You can just name your choice. Has it shown on the screen? Oh, there we go. I've got one response so far, which is not doing very well. Okay, we're on 50-50 at the moment. And I see clearly go into the arc leading at 71%. Give it a couple of seconds. So we're going to declare in this Wednesday night share poll, go into the arc as the winner. And I'm going to spend the rest of the evening or the rest of the half hour explaining to you why of the 9 people who responded, 5 were wrong and 2 are correct, and why go out of the ark is the correct answer. Now there, we can do this. There we go. So is that showing somewhere? Should be. Yeah. Anyway, um, let me explain. What was this flood about? The world's gone corrupt. It's gone awry. It's gone bad. We're not going to go into it all, but it talks about the entire world being filled with Hamas, which I think is a reference to robbery, to unethical behavior, and in fact in the translation of Onkelos, it translates Hamas as captives. It's very interesting, but anyway, we won't go there now. The world has gone corrupt. It's gone wrong. It's not right. And Hashem basically says we're going to restart. So let me use an analogy. When you get into real trouble with your electronic device, it stops working, it's sluggish and it's wrong. You press one button on the screen and it gives you a different app or whatever. And eventually, you're left with no choice but to do a reset on your phone. And then suddenly, it takes about 15, 20 minutes, and the phone is clean as on the day that you took it out the box, and there's no information, there's no apps, and hopefully you've got a good backup somewhere. You can, you can bring information back from it. Think of the world needing a major reset. And the way it's going to happen is via the Mabul, via this flood, which is going to kind of take it back to its original state. What was the original state? Let's go back to last week's parasha, Genesis, days of creation. Before there was a world, there was water everywhere. The entire surface of the earth was covered with water. Of course, life wasn't possible except maybe for fish, but not for humans, not for animals. And then at one point in creation, Hashem separates. First of all, the waters above, the waters below. That's on day 2. And then after that, he separates dry land, Yabasha, and the seas, and there's possibility of life. And this is the world as we know it. But then there's creatures, and then there are humans, and then there is, of course, corruption. So how do we restart? What's the hard reset to the world? You press that button that says, let's cover everything in water, and then it'll be reset. Thank God we have an ark. So there's a backup. And we can restore and start again. So the animals, they won't have to start right from the beginning. But we've got a new world where corruption, immorality has been uprooted, where Noah and his family are seen in the eyes of Hashem as righteous enough to be the ones to restart civilization. And even among animals where there was, we are told, immorality and lack of respect for one species towards another, well, that is now, we restarting with animals that did not engage in what would be the animal equivalent of immorality. Think of it as dipping in a mikveh. So what happens when you dip in a mikveh? You are inside the mikveh, unable to live because there's water. And you immerse, you go under the surface of the water, and basically life isn't possible. You can stay there for a few seconds. Some people stay maybe for longer. I actually have a woman, a part of the community, who does records in staying under the water for a long time, and I forget what a record is now, but minutes and minutes of being under the water, and it's actually a kind of, I don't know, sport. To each their own, I'll say. But eventually, if you want to live, you're going to have to surface, and then you're reborn. So if a person is in a state of impurity, they then do a hard reset, or hopefully this one is just a soft reset, and then they emerge, and the mikveh, if you can see the Hebrew words at the bottom, tevilah is the Hebrew word for immersion. And those are the same letters, if you just do an anagram here, as habitul. Habitul means self-nullification. Yeah, I think that's the best way to translate it in this context. In kind of you want to be reborn. So while you're there, you don't exist because you can't really live under the water, and then you emerge. And interesting, when does mikveh purify? It's totally academic, but Rambam teaches us that mikveh purifies when you emerge. It's not when you go in and you're under, it's when you emerge. The moment of, what's the opposite of immersion? Ascending and coming out of the water, that's the moment at which the tevilah, the purification process, has helped. Incidentally, the amount of water needed for a mikveh, for it to be kosher, is 40 seah of water. The length of the downpour of the precipitation was 40 days. So we can see that there's a connection there. And just as a person immerses from the mikveh pure, likewise, the effect of the flood on the world was upon re-emergence. It wasn't during the time. It was an amazing time in the ark. Normal laws of nature were suspended. It was a little bit like experiencing a messianic age, just in that ark, because they were sustained miraculously. I mean, as much as Noah prepared food and hoarded food for himself and all the animals. There's no way you can put away enough food for a whole year for an entire zoo plus humans, and I mean to keep all that waste matter. There was a special floor dedicated for that of the 3 floors of the ark, but to keep that there. I mean, if you imagine the fact that animals all kind of coexisted, I don't know what kind of separation they had, but the picture we have in our minds when we think about the Messianic era is the Gaza Evim Kevis. It's the wolf living side by side with the lamb. That's Isaiah's prophecy, talking about an era of an amazing world peace, not only among humans but even in the animal world. That was the year that they were all in the ark, but that was an animated, unnatural world. You can't stay in the ark. The purpose of this flood, of this Mabul, is to emerge from the ark and go back into a real world. And let me just say that it wasn't without its bumps. Okay, there were problems there. Noah emerged, and we all know that he ran into serious trouble. But the real purpose of the flood was not to go there and remain there, but the verse that says "Tzei minateva" is the one that is most important, because that's about the world having been reset and now humans coming out again, repopulating, and recreating, a new civilization that is, more moral and more correct. And why, Noah is criticized for, his downfall shortly after he came out of the ark, and we know he planted the vine, etc. It's because here you try to create a new civilization, and you're not starting on the right foot. Things got better, thank God. Things got better. So into the ark, but out of the ark. Now here's a very interesting one. Mystics tell us that the word teva, besides meaning ark, well, that's Hebrew, also means the word. Mystics tell us that the instruction bo el teva, go into the teva, the word, is actually an instruction to each one of us. Outside, there's a storm, and we have many distractions that pull us away from where we should be. What do? We go into the word. That's the word of Torah. It's the word of prayer. It's going into a world that is spiritual. When we learn Torah, we're united with Hashem in a way that goes far beyond. There's a verse. It's in Song of Songs, where it talks about the many waters, vast floods that cannot destroy or quench. In other words, destroy. I don't know why they translate it as quench. Love, nor can rivers drown it. A connection with Hashem is one. We know Song of Songs is actually, it reads as a love story. It's actually the Jewish people and Hashem, and our unbelievable relationship that we have with each other. And floods here, our mystics tell us, refers to the concerns that we have, the living in this world and keeping our faith, even when they're huge challenges. And these challenges can be, here's how it describes when the flood starts. All the fountains of the great deep burst apart, and all the floodgates of the sky broke open. So we have a concurrent waters from below and waters from above. We have these, geysers bursting out with boiling water and destroying mankind and animals and vegetation from below, and then we have from above as well. And this is a little bit of a description of the things that threaten to distract us and threaten to get in the way of our bond with Hashem, our love for Hashem. And what's King Solomon saying there in Song of Songs? That all that the multiple waters, the vast waters, are not going to be able to, destroy, flood our love for Hashem and our relationship with Him. What is getting in the way there? So we saw there is the floodgates from below. That's earthly distractions, simple stuff like making a living, all the concerns, all the worldly pressures and challenges and stresses that we have, and they kind of sometimes get in the way of our direct relationship with Hashem. And from above, we have more spiritual kind of distractions. Maybe we have questions in faith, not understanding Hashem's ways. Sometimes a Yetzer Hara disguises itself into somebody very, very holy, something very, very, very holy, where, when sentences begin with, surely God would want me to. Really? He'd want you to do something which he, in the Torah, says clearly you don't do, but you rationalize that under your personal circumstances, those instructions don't apply. But surely God would want me to. And I'm not going to finish a sentence, but I'm not going to share with you how many times in my career as a rabbi, discussions have centered around what God would want us to do, and I'm pointing at the Chumash on the corner of the desk and saying, well, He does say clearly what He wants to. So the reason I'm not going to share how many is because I've stopped counting. I mean, this is typical rabbi. Non-rabbi conversation, congregant conversation, where you try to explain to somebody that they can't rationalize and they can't tailor Torah faith to their understanding, to their limited intellectual appreciation. So what's the solution to all those distractions, to making sure that the waters don't destroy the love? Bo elateva. When there is raging waters outside and you want to save yourself, go into the ark. In this case, the ark, the teva, are the words of prayer, words of Torah. And those inspire, guide, and inform our actions. But you can't remain there. You got to come out. You dedicate times unless you are, studying in a kollel full time. And even then, you got to go at some point home and be with your family, etc. You can't remain cloistered away in the holy always. As important as Bo Elateva, going into the holy words of Torah, of Tefillah, Tzei Minat Teva, come out the ark, is more important, because that shows that the Torah that you connected with, the prayer that has inspired you, is actually effective, because when you come out, you go to shul in the morning, and then after shul there's a short shiur, and the rabbi gives you a lesson in business ethics, whatever it is, and you get to your office, sit down at work, and the temptation of money, as we know, is huge. And the next thing, you're about to enter into a deal that really doesn't fit at all with the words you heard in the show earlier. So unless what you gain in the ark, in the woods, is actually taken out with you, then you're failing. So say going out of that ark is crucial. I want to share with you two other arcs that are both very relevant and very timely. The month of Tishrei is like an ark. It's a place of refuge. We're actually standing there at the threshold. It got dark a few moments ago, and we moved from the 30th of Tishrei into the 1st of Cheshvan. Cheshvan is a day, a month without any chagim, without any festivals at all. Tishrei, the same cannot be said. In fact, the way it came out this year, it was like, Good Shabbos, Good Yontif, Good Shabbos, Good Yontif, Good Yontif, Good Shabbos, Good Yontif, and it was from one to the other, to the other, to the other, and it was a succession of Kiddush and Havdalah with everything in between for a full month. It's very comforting to be in the embrace of Hashem and to be surrounded by mitzvot, from shofar to fasting Yom Kippur to building a sukkah to eating in the sukkah to sleeping in the sukkah if you manage to shake the lulav and etrog. Those are all mitzvot that contain us and connect us. Cheshvan is more difficult because it's kind of routine again. And we've got to make that out the ark exit, which we actually make in tonight as we move from the 1 month into the next 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. First day of Rosh Chodesh is the 30th of the previous month, in this case 30th of Tishrei. Next second day of Rosh Chodesh, which starts tonight, is the first day of the next month, in this case, of course, Cheshvan. We transition from the one to the other, but it's a difficult transition because we're going from being guided by Hashem every step of the way to going beyond that into kind of being on our own devices. And we've got to make sure that we have a successful exit from the ark. That we come out of that shelter of Tishrei with, and don't stumble and don't come out there and get drunk and do awful things, but actually take the inspiration of the month of Tishrei and very successfully moving into our daily lives, when there is not that rigid framework for how relationship with Hashem works. And even if we're not, celebrating Yontif and make Kiddush and Havdalah every single day, we're still finding ourselves connected. I haven't counted, but there were quite a few Kiddushes and quite a few Havdalahs in the past month. And then there's one more arc I want to talk about. It's the one where we have spent the past 2 years. Historical 2 years. But maybe like a flood, like a mabul, a whirlwind of destruction, pain, doubts, challenges, crisis at the same time. When we reflect back on the miracles, that happened from what's it called over there, Yemen in the south to Tehran in the north. It's quite unbelievable, the protection of Hashem and the miracles that have happened. And that's going via Gaza and Lebanon and Syria. A friend of mine sent me a video. His child came back from his national service, which began as the war began, and he was sent home. In fact, he had his they do the Kumta when they inducted into the army, and he sent me a picture. This was 2 years ago in Gaza, surrounded by bombed out buildings, and that's where they were, formally inducted into the army. And then he was released. In fact, the day the hostages came out, Hoshana Rabbah and his unit prepared a video of what they'd done for the past 2 years. No faces, but it was, Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, and all the places they've been. Syria, back to Gaza, back to Lebanon, and this is how I've spent the past 2 years. But it's an unbelievable story of divine providence, divine protection. Why do I call this an ark? Because yes, our faith has been challenged, and our emotions have been, really pulled to the hilt. But it was very contained in that we also experienced miracles, and we also had a closeness with Hashem, because we davened every single day. Who didn't say a psalm for the captains and for the soldiers every single day of the past 2 years? And I must tell you, we stopped in shul. The last time was on Hoshana Rabbah, and then we stopped because we could say Tehillim forever. And I said to everybody, carry on praying, but in shul we're going to stop because people want to get to work, and this was adding substantial time between the Mishaberachs and the Tehillim. So we've stopped, but I said, but we'll continue praying. But it was very connecting. Every day we thought of the people in Israel, of the Tzahal soldiers. We thought of the hostages. We were connected. We were connected with each other in a way, that we don't normally have that level of connectedness with the Holy Land and with everyone there. Yes, we know in theory it's there, but it's not really an emotion that comes out all the time. That feeling of wanting to hug one another and be united across with Jews, all over the world, from I don't know where to begin, but from Manchester all the way to Pittsburgh and everything in between. We have this unbelievable connection with Jews and with their pain and their sorrow. That was very containing. The war ended. At least the ceasefire was signed. Please God, the war should be ended. The hostages came home. We were overcome with joy. At the same time, we lost that level of connection. So now we out the ark. We out of that contained 2-year period in our history when connection with Hashem, with each other, with the Holy Land was very strong. And we out the ark. We're coming out. We got to make sure that that is implemented. That is continuing. In fact, in our shul newsletter, I actually published an article, I think, which I found on aish.com about making sure we continue doing all the things we've done for the past 2 years in terms of interpersonal relationships and our connection with Israel, and being kind, being considerate, and etc. It was very well written. So it was in our newsletter. But if you would like the article, then just please give me a shout, and I'll forward that with pleasure. So that's the 4th dimension, of exiting the ark, and this is kind of very timely to now. So it's the personal tragedy, the historical ark, and it's going in and going out. It's the personal, every day, going into the words of holiness, and a time in our day when we are focused on the spiritual and making sure that is carried forward into a day-to-day life. It's about the transition from the month of Tishrei and into the month of Cheshvan and the rest of the year. And of course, it's please God, the end of a very bitter, difficult time in the history of the Jewish people, and into a period that is beyond that, with the hostages free. Please God, may the last of the bodies that have still to come home, be returned very soon, and may there be a full and a very lasting peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Pleasure.